Welcome to the Parallel World Library, where we explore strange and fascinating stories in other dimensions. Now, let's relax your body and take your mind to another world. Number 13, Mink Street by TunaV. Chapter 26, Black Notebook 1. When driving out, the car carried 2 guests. When driving back, the car carried 2 large urns of ashes. Although the funeral was rather simple, even sparse after the cremation and return trip, heaven seemed to show some respect. It started raining as if to highlight a bit of a farewell atmosphere for Jeff and Mr. Mosan's departure from this world. After cremation, the ashes were neatly arranged and placed in urns prepared in advance, bearing the Inmarais family company label. Jeff's urn would be placed in the welfare area of the cemetery. As for Mr. Mosan, since none of his children wanted to receive his urn, they voluntarily paid extra to the Inmarais house to help smooth things over, allowing their father to enjoy welfare benefits. So basically, Jeff piggybacked on Mr. Mosan's funeral, while Mr. Mosan piggybacked on Jeff's welfare ticket. Barring any surprises, the urns of both men would be placed in the welfare cemetery side by side. Not bad. They could use their skulls to knock on the wall and check on each other if lonely. Sylvan, still pondering old Darcy's words about the cost of urns, curiously asked Uncle Mason, who was driving,
Uncle, how much profit do our coffins make?
Regular coffins roughly double the profit. Custom-made or specially designed ones can triple it. Some people who were extremely status-conscious in life, working in the government system, usually chose solemn and discreet styles. Some with noble titles and assets will order luxurious coffins in the aristocratic style based on their family traditions, and can even have their family crest engraved on top. As for those nouveau riche, it's much simpler. They like the gaudy, gold-plated style. Right. We have a special book at home for customers to choose coffin colors, with over 200 types of coffins. If you're interested, you can flip through it when we return. Oh, the listed prices there are basically 5 times the purchase cost. When advertising to customers, we'll introduce a discount program.
Several times the profit, Sylvan calculated in his heart and felt it was still humane, not as exaggerated as the urns in the crematorium, which cost less than $50 to make but sold for $1,000, a 20-fold profit. Uncle Mason turned on the car radio and, using the previous example, said,
If you only look at our profit, it's not as outrageous as Mrs. Hughes's crematorium urns. But really, how much can they sell an urn for, even with such a markup? One of our most basic coffins already costs $1 million Lu. Moreover, our customer base is different from theirs. For us, customers choosing cremation are, well, all low-quality customers, but they're the main clientele for the crematorium. They burn bodies there every day, but a month of their work only equals our profit from 3 normal orders. Of course, Mr. Mosan wasn't a normal customer.
Do you want to expand the scale, Uncle?
Sylvan asked. Mason shook his head, saying,
I failed in investments plus leverage. By the way, do you know what leverage is?
I do.
Good to know. In short, I'm sorry to tell you, my poor nephew, your grandfather's money, which is also the future inheritance you could receive, has been greatly reduced because of your uncle, who couldn't admit defeat.
After a pause, Mason added,
Don't be angry with your uncle.
According to Rulan tradition, the eldest son is usually responsible for inheriting the family business, while the youngest son goes out to make his way. So, following this custom, Sylvan, as the eldest grandson of the house, should discuss the funeral home's future, while Mason, at most, would receive money or inherit some shares without the right to make decisions.
I don't blame you, Uncle.
The previous Sylvan's memories always held a good impression of this uncle. Through more than half a month of interaction, Sylvan also discovered that although Mason liked to be lazy, flatterer, and greedy for money with quite a few bad habits, these were flaws that ordinary people all have. But most importantly, Uncle Mason's attitude towards family and money was earnest. His greatest aspiration was to earn money to rebuild his career. This uncle had once worked in financial investment in a big city, but could now only drive a hearse to transport guests, obviously not willingly resigned to this situation. When Sylvan asked whether he should submit the nearly 20,000 Lu consultation fee to the company account, he unhesitatingly refused, which also showed that he wasn't the type to take money from his nephew's hands. Working in the family business, he could enjoy commission benefits. If this 20,000 Lu was submitted, next month, he and his aunt could split half. After all, this earned money had nothing to do with the family's operating costs. If not counting the 1,000 Lu Sylvan gave to old Darcy, the expenses were simply a bit of saliva.
By the way, Sylvan, next time there's another order, try to talk to the customers yourself. We'll see the effect. If it's good, you can also enjoy the company's commission as a family member.
Yes, Uncle.
Working for Inmarais, or working for Dis, is my honor. Chapter 27, Black Notebook, 2.
Also, you just mentioned expansion. I feel we don't need to expand now because, even if we could borrow money from the bank, we have no way to compete in scale with those chain companies. So, I think we should still improve our service quality while finding more items to increase revenue, like what you did.
At the same time, there was a puddle ahead and the wheel fell into it, causing a jolt. The two urns in the car collided with a pop, fortunately without damage. Mason looked back and said,
When I die in the future, there's no need to prepare a funeral at all. Don't mention a coffin. I don't even need Minna and Lunt to prepare an urn for me.
Huh? Why do you feel that way, Uncle?
Some things, when you've seen too much of them, you feel they lose their significance. When I'm old, as long as Minna and Lunt can be filial to me a bit, when I close my eyes, even if they use a black plastic bag from buying fish at the market to hold my ashes, I won't resent it.
Then how to dispose of those ashes?
Sylvan asked.
How to dispose of them? Find a slightly larger flower pot, put me in it, add some soil, casually plant some flowers on top, and it can be placed in the garden. When you're at home, you can water me. When you're not home, I can watch the house for everyone.
At this moment, Ron, who that jolt had just woken up, overheard this conversation and curiously said,
Mr. Mason, young Master Sylvan, why are you discussing such heavy topics?
Ron, for your future funeral, how do you plan to do it?
Mason asked casually, one hand on the steering wheel, the other holding a lighter to light his cigarette.
Haha, I must plan to spend the last Lu on my body before I die.
What about your family?
Sylvan asked.
Tomorrow after work, I'll go to that nursing home. If she still doesn't want to live with me in the end, I probably won't have family in the future, let alone the possibility of children.
Then what about your afterlife arrangements?
Afterlife arrangements?
Ron patted his belly.
That's simple. I heard that the Luogia City Hospital is collecting bodies donated by society, and they even honor the donated bodies as some teacher.
Sylvan said,
Gross anatomy teacher.
Right. Young Master Sylvan knows so much. Ha ha ha. Before I die, I'll sign an agreement to donate myself to become a gross anatomy teacher.
Mason flicked his cigarette ash, laughing and saying,
I didn't expect that, Ron. Your image in my eyes has suddenly risen a lot.
Ha ha.
Ron scratched his head.
I didn't study well from a young age, couldn't absorb knowledge from books, and dropped out early to find work. But I know those who can pass the exam to enter Luogia Medical School are all outstanding students. In the future, my stupid brain will lie there, letting those excellent students stand beside me, all bowing their heads and calling me teacher. That's something that makes one happy and enjoyable.
Ha 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 ha.
Mason laughed. Sylvan couldn't help but laugh too, but he still reminded him,
Then Ron, you need to lose weight.
Lose weight?
Ron said, surprised.
Do you need to meet body shape requirements to be a gross anatomy teacher?
Of course not, but your fat will pile up after they open your belly. Then those students will probably cut away your excess fat while cursing under their breath. Oh God, why is my gross anatomy teacher such a damn fatso?
Ron suddenly tensed up, saying,
Is it that scary?
Immediately, Ron fell into deep contemplation about his afterlife arrangements. Mason curiously asked,
Sylvan, how do you know about this?
Aunt Mary told me. Uncle, sometimes she handles some special bodies. So at the dinner table, she sometimes can't help but complain.
Mason nodded in agreement, saying,
That's right. Her temper is getting worse.
Mason sighed, flicking his cigarette ash again, saying,
It's all my fault.
When they got home, it was already 9 in the evening. After placing the urns in the basement, today's work was considered complete. Dinner consisted of canned herring, bacon, and salad. Sylvan washed his hands and went to the table to look at the dinner. He was a bit disappointed, especially since he had gone out and returned later than usual today. He was more looking forward to a delicious and decadent dinner. But next time, he'd better be in charge himself.
Darling, let me open the canned herring for you.
Hearing canned herring, Uncle Mason now spread his arms, smiling, and kissed Aunt Mary a few times in front of Sylvan.
This is truly a happy dinner. My favorite dish, prepared by the one I love. Love you.
The other day in the car, Uncle Mason had told Aunt Mary that her pie was the only dish he loved. Sylvan blinked, suddenly having a kind of unusual premonition. Click! When the fish can was opened, it made a deep sound. Immediately after, a smell of rotten meat directly filled the air. Sylvan's stomach directly contracted once, then surged up to his throat, but he forcefully suppressed it. This smell in front of him, compared to the stinky tofu that Sylvan had tried in his previous life, made that tofu dish seem like a little kid compared to a big guy. Uncle Mason scooped up a piece and put it in his mouth, chewing with an expression of enjoyment. Then he scooped another portion and placed it in front of Sylvan.
Eat, Sylvan. In this house, you and I have always been the most loyal fans of canned herring. No, devotees are more accurate.
Sylvan held his breath, looking towards Mason. Mason lifted another piece, calling out,
Come on, let's enjoy our faith.
After saying this, he put it in his mouth again, extremely enjoying chewing and swallowing. Sylvan looked embarrassed, but who told Sylvan to like this kind of food? Moreover, Sylvan, who had tried stinky tofu in his previous life, vaguely speculated in his heart that this should be similar, smelling bad, but tasting good. Gathering all his courage, Sylvan lifted it and put it in his mouth. In a moment of explosion, Sylvan's eyes widened, unable to swallow no matter how hard he tried. He hurriedly grabbed a napkin, spat it out, then immediately stood up, left the table, and went to the bathroom to start vomiting. At the table, Mason sat with Mary, looking a bit surprised.
What's wrong with him?
Aunt Mary said puzzledly. Uncle Mason guessed,
On the way back, the car had a draft, and it was raining. Could he have caught a cold?
Then I'll go prepare some medicine for him.
Chapter 28, Black Notebook, 3.
After vomiting, Sylvan panted reluctantly.
Turning his head, Sylvan saw Pal standing at the bathroom door. The cat was staring at him, and looking at the curve of its mouth, Sylvan had the feeling it was laughing at him.
Are you laughing at me?
Pal's expression remained unchanged, its tail swaying. At this moment, Aunt Mary's voice came from outside.
Sylvan, are you catching a cold? I've brought you some medicine.
Yes, Aunt. I'll come out to take it later.
Then what about your late-night meal?
No, that damn dinner. Sylvan didn't want to return to that dining table. Right now, he didn't even want to return to the second floor. The entire second floor must be filled with the smell of canned herring by now.
There are quite a few snacks at Lun's place. I'll just eat something light. My stomach isn't feeling too good, so I probably can't eat too much.
Well, all right, take care. If you're still unwell tomorrow morning, I'll take you to the clinic.
Thank you, Aunt.
Aunt Mary turned and left. Sylvan faintly heard her scolding his cousin Lunt.
Lunt, your teeth are already so rotten, yet you dare to hide snacks. If you don't care about your teeth anymore, then I'll pull them all out right now.
In the bathroom, Sylvan felt a bit sorry for his cousin. His heart was filled with guilt towards this little cousin. Then he took a comfortable bath. After bathing, Sylvan dried his hair with a towel and walked back to his bedroom. There was a glass of milk and some bread on the desk in the bedroom. Lunt was sitting on the floor, rearranging the trunk that was initially under the bed. Hearing Sylvan enter the room, he turned his head and looked at Sylvan with a grievance.
Brother, Mom confiscated all the candies and chocolates I hid.
The cousin's face showed no resentment, nor did he seem to blame Sylvan. He just looked a bit helpless.
I should have known earlier not to be so frugal, eating only one piece each night. I should have just eaten them all freely.
Ha ha ha.
Sylvan smiled, took 1,000 lu out of his pocket, hesitated a bit. It didn't seem appropriate for a child to carry too much money, and finally pulled out only 3 bills, handing them to Lunt.
Take this to buy candy. When you've spent it all, come back to me.
Lunt didn't reach out to take it but shook his head, saying,
I can't spend my brother's money.
Isn't it natural for a little brother to spend his big brother's money?
No, Mom said we should take care of Big Brother because Big Brother doesn't have...
Lunt immediately changed his tone.
Actually, I have my own pocket money too.
The family had 4 children, including Sylvan. Theoretically, the monthly pocket money for the 4 children was the same, and this part of the expenses was also recorded in the account book. But because the cousins had their parents here, their parents managed their pocket money on their behalf, so the amount that reached the children's hands was less. On the contrary, because Sylvan had no parents, the elders felt awkward about managing his pocket money, so he was given the full amount each month. This was also why Sylvan could save up to 6,000 lu.
If you brush your teeth seriously daily and control your snack intake, there won't be any problems.
Sylvan still placed the 300 lu on Lunt's bed, and at the same time, he noticed quite a few books and notebooks on Lunt's bed. They must have been taken out earlier when Aunt was investigating, as these things should have been placed under the bed. One of the notebooks had a cover with a white rose, but it was deliberately colored red using a red pen. Sylvan casually opened it. On the first page was a drawing of 3 people, 2 big and 1 small. Although the drawing was very abstract, one could clearly see that on the left was the father, on the right was the mother, and in the middle was their child. The child could be identified as male because it didn't have the distinctive long hair of women like the mother beside it.
You draw quite well.
Sylvan said to Lunt.
Brother, this isn't my notebook.
It's not yours?
If the notebook in this room wasn't Lunt's, it could only be Sylvan's. Sylvan thought momentarily but couldn't recall this book. This was normal. Looking at the notebook's paper quality, it must be quite old. Although he had inherited Sylvan's memories, if there were things that Sylvan himself had forgotten, naturally, he wouldn't be able to remember them.
Lunt, it's time to brush your teeth and get ready for bed.
A loud voice rang out at the top of the stairs. Fortunately, the Inmarais family lived in a detached villa. If they were in an apartment, Aunt's voice would definitely have received complaints from the neighbors.
Yes, Mom.
Lunt ran out of the room. Sylvan sat on Lunt's bed and continued to flip through the notebook. The drawing on the second page was the same as the first page. It still showed a couple with a child. The third page was the same. Sylvan was a bit uninterested but frowned slightly when he opened to the 4th page. The image on the 4th page was all blacked out, leaving only an empty circle in the middle. From a professional perspective of analyzing children's drawings, this picture suggests that the child who created it felt extremely insecure inside. Black, in fact, is a defensive color. This type of layout conveyed a feeling very similar to when a child is afraid of the dark, wrapping the blanket tightly around themselves but leaving a small gap to peek outside or to breathe fresh air. However, this drawing created an even more severe feeling. Sylvan continued to turn the pages, and the next few pages showed similar images. However, the position of the empty circle varied slightly, sometimes appearing at the bottom, sometimes at the top, or leaning to the left or right. Until he turned to another page, Sylvan's hand suddenly stiffened. This picture shows a man and a woman lying horizontally, which should be the father and mother, according to the previous drawing style. These two characters in the picture were depicted as lying down because another person was drawn vertically, standing there. In the picture, a black mass was drawn from the stomach area of the father and mother figures, and it was also colored black beside the two people. Sylvan couldn't help but swallow. Were these wounds and fresh blood flowing to the ground? And the standing man was an adult figure who had never appeared in previous drawings, holding something in his hand. Sylvan moved the notebook close to his eyes, carefully observing that object. Children's drawings often require guesswork.
Held in the hand. Is it a sword? Even if it's a sword, this is too short.
Suddenly, Sylvan's mind flashed the memory of that day, on the way back from the hospital, when he helped grandfather treat the wound on his arm and then saw inside the black trunk that sword hilt.
It's this!
This is the end of today's story. Please like and subscribe to support the channel and follow the next developments. Thank you.